Hello, and thanks for joining Rise City Church's online service. My name is Mariah, and I will be your host today. If this is the first time you've been with us, we'd love to have the opportunity to connect with you. Text the word guest to 484848, and we'll send you a link to our online connection card. And if you're in the San Diego area, after you fill that out, we will send you a coupon for some free Chick-fil-A. Again, that's guest to 484848. Chick-fil-A, come on. We also want to let you know that if you have any care needs or prayer requests, we're here to help. So you can text the word care to that same number, 484848, and we'll send you a form that you can fill out to get on the list to speak with the pastor and just pray for you guys or whatever care it is that you guys need. All right, let's jump into some worship.
Chase me down, chase me down, seek me out. How could I be lost when you have called me found? Chase me down, seek me out. How could I be lost when you have called me found? Chase me down.
I need to say this, but it's been a crazy year. And we know the economic impacts of quarantine, shelter in place, homeschooling, distance learning, all of it has affected families in so many ways. In addition, the holidays are coming up and we know that a lot of families are feeling extra pressure and stress. So that's why we're excited to announce that once again, we're gonna partner with the Lakeside Christian Help Center for their annual toy drive on December 19th. They've asked that we could bring unwrapped toys for children ages ranging kind of newborn to 6th grade and drop them off here at the church any Sunday morning or during the week even to collect for these families in our community. You can also order gifts through Amazon and have them delivered to the church straight if you prefer, which is my preference. The only request we make is that they are no gift cards, but they're actual unwrapped gifts. For more information regarding this event, you can find it at the church website, risecitychurch.com/events. In the spirit of Christmas, we want to remind you that the Christmas offering nominations are open. If you know of a family or a business that could use some extra support this time of year, please head over to risecitychurch.com/Christmas offering and give them a nomination. If you've got kids today, make sure you check out our kids ministry programming. They are learning about gratitude this month, and today's lesson is about the vineyard workers. So go over to the YouTube and watch that with your kids. It will be such an important morning. Also, we want to thank you for your continued generosity. We just want to give a quick reminder that we have a couple of ways to give. So you can go to our website, risecitychurch.com/give, visit the app, or mail in or drop off the check at a physical location. The address is located here on the screen. One of the organizations we are so proud to be able to support this year with a Christmas offering is the Pregnancy Care Clinic. We're excited to show you guys a little video that gives you more information as to what they do. Their work is immeasurably important in our community, and we feel honored to get to partner with them this year.
Welcome to Pregnancy Care Clinic. My name is Josh McClure. I'm the executive director here, and Pregnancy Care Clinic is here to help young men and women that are facing unintended pregnancy. The effort is to share the truth with the love of Jesus, and trusting that an educated client is going to make a decision for life. Services that we offer are pregnancy testing, pregnancy verification, ultrasound, and we've recently added STI testing that will help us build trust with young people that are likely to be needing our other services. We also offer education programs for parenting classes, moms helping moms, and childbirth classes. And then we have a after-abortion healing program for those that choose abortion. The point being that for every client that comes in is going to receive support and care regardless of the choice that she makes. One of the important things that we share with people about the Pregnancy Care Clinic is that all of our services are free. So our clients come in and they're not expected to pay for our services. And that's because of generous donations from the community, from churches and businesses here in El Cajon and throughout San Diego. This is our library. This is where we bring our clients when they first come to visit us. We're going to talk with them about what's going on in their life, why they think they're pregnant, what services that they might need, any stressors that are going on in their life, people that might be pressing them towards having an abortion. We just want to walk them through the process of thinking through and understanding what all their options are. And that happens right here. So this is one of our exam rooms. It's just like you would expect to find in any doctor's office because we're a licensed medical clinic. We bring our clients in to meet with our nurse, and we're able to do ultrasound, and we're also able to do pregnancy verification in here. All of our volunteers and staff are trained to look for the opportunity to share the gospel as well. So we have spiritual discussions with every client, and we're looking for that open door. And if we see that open door and we feel that nudge from the Holy Spirit, then we're going to take the opportunity to share the gospel. The reality is that oftentimes people that are facing an unintended pregnancy or just generally crises in their life find themselves very open to hearing the gospel.
Hi, my name's Maddie. I'm one of the newer nurses at Pregnancy Care Clinic, and I'm still in ultrasound training, but this is a quick tutorial of the room. And if you're familiar with ultrasounds at all, you know that this is one of the best machines that we have, so it's great for all the moms to be able to see clear pictures of their baby, even if they're only at about 5.5 weeks. And so on the screen, there's a baby that's 8 weeks and 6 days, and that's one of the things we're able to do is measure it and estimate the age. One of my favorite things about ultrasound so far is how moms are so surprised every time at 5.5 weeks or 6, 7, 8 weeks that we can see the heartbeat, you can see the baby. Further along, the baby's moving and doing flips, and every single time especially first-time moms are just so surprised and so happy to be able to learn about everything that's already going on, even when they found out they were pregnant yesterday and they would never picture that their baby is already moving and the heart is beating. And it's just a miracle every single time to see.
When our moms find out they're pregnant, the advocate comes and gets a baby blanket basket. Oh, that's fun to say. Anyway, and so we offer them. Now, all these baby blankets are homemade and heart-filled. And so many moms are just amazed. They get free maternity clothes or baby clothes, wipes and diapers, formula, if that's what they want. And just a neat fellowship with other moms. If there's a need, our abortion vulnerable or abortion minded clients, they can come once a month for up to the baby's 2 years old. So throughout their pregnancy, all the way to the baby's 2 years old, once a month for free maternity clothes, baby clothes, wipes, diapers, formula, whatever they need, we are here. Whatever we get, we freely give.
So this is the center of our operation. We call it the volunteer work area, but this is for volunteers and staff members to do all the various projects that we do. They also do their charting paperwork for clients and conference with each other as we go in and out, and as we're helping the clients with all the services that they came to see us for. We do rely heavily on volunteers. Best thing to do if you want to volunteer is to give us a call, 619-442-4357, and ask for Karen.
We are so grateful that you came in and saw our clinic today. We hope that you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'd love to talk to you more about the clinic. You can also visit our website, www.supportpcc.com. That has a lot of great information, so we thank you for your support and for your time sharing with us today. Thank you.
Well, if you joined us last week, I had the opportunity to share about the way in which God loves to use people who aren't perfect and don't have it all together or seem to have enough to offer. And I was able to do it by talking about my boyhood hero MacGyver and how he could take a bunch of random junk and make a cool manly machine to blow stuff up and save the day, as well as the biblical story of Gideon, who God called and raised up to be a mighty warrior, saved Israel despite his fear and insecurities. But I also recognize that MacGyver and Gideon, while amazing, aren't necessarily for everyone when it comes to childhood heroes. While most boys grow up loving stories about warriors, ninjas, and robotic sharks with lasers on their heads, that's not really what my daughters are into, what they want to hear when I tuck them in at night. They would usually prefer to hear about magical unicorns and princesses, maybe a classic fairy tale story with a great king in search of a queen, and a poor orphan girl who sees her wildest dreams come true. And of course you'd have an evil villain up to no good, and an old wizard-like man who guides the young orphan to eventually become a princess and save the world. Well, while you may be thinking I just described the basic plot to almost every Disney princess movie ever made, that is actually another great story in the Bible. An orphan girl who would become a queen. Her name was Esther. And she has a whole book dedicated to what appears to be, on the surface anyway, a very fairy tale life. The kind of dream every little girl wishes upon a star to see come true. So, since I spent so much time last week talking about warriors and building bombs out of duct tape, in the interest of fairness, I decided that today I would go the other direction and talk about a heroic princess who saved the world. A really great story that in the end might just have something more to say to us than the run-of-the-mill Disney movie. So let's find out together, all right? Here we go. All right. Once upon a time, well, 482 BC to be exact, in a great magical empire known as Persia. And no, this isn't Aladdin, there's no genie, but there was a great and mighty king known as Xerxes. And as the Persian emperor, he ruled over the most dominant world power in all the land. He had no equal. And one day, he decided to throw a massive party and invite all the most important people from around the empire in order to show off his wealth, power, and his beautiful trophy wife. We pick up the story, and it says this: on the seventh day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. The king became furious and burned with anger. Now you should know, in the queen's defense, she actually had a pretty good reason for refusing. You see, for a noble woman of such high standing, it would have been a really degrading request. In that society, the high-born, wealthy women were actually kept out of sight, and they rode around in closed carriages so as not to be seen by lowly common people who were beneath them. So to be drug out and displayed in front of everyone like some prize cow at a county fair would have been socially humiliating and kind of cruel. But the king didn't care. He wanted everyone to see all the beautiful things he owned. So in his anger and the fear of his nobles that a queen saying no to the king could open the door for their wives to get funny ideas, the king decrees the queen be stripped of her title, forever banished from his presence. Which was not really about relationships. In truth, they probably never really even had one or knew each other well. It was more about political influence in her role as queen. Now she would just be another face in his large harem of wives, harem of wives? We'll come back to that. So after this, his attendants proposed a hunt for a new queen. They said, "Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all those beautiful young women into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Let the young women who please the king instead of Vashti become queen." It was basically like Cinderella meets The Bachelor, right? After all, I'm pretty sure being a contestant on The Bachelor is actually a lot more like being a concubine in a king's harem than real dating anyways, but I digress. Okay. Now, among the Persian Empire were a small, often persecuted group of people known as the Jews. They were spread out in pockets across the empire because their ancestors had been taken as prisoners and slaves 100 years earlier when their nation fell in a war with Babylon. And it was from their people that we first meet a poor orphan girl named Hadassah, a name she would eventually change to Esther. Esther was being raised by her uncle Mordecai, who took her in after her parents died, and despite her lowly, poor station, somehow she caught the eye of the commissioners and was chosen to go to the palace for a shot at becoming a princess. Every little orphan girl's dream come true. And while there's no mention of glass slippers, pumpkins turning into carriages, or mice making dresses, it does say that despite being a commoner with no real business living in a palace, she won over the overseer who helped make her beautiful for the ball, just like a fairy godmother. It says Esther was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge over the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. You see, it was all about making the best first impression when being seen by the king. So before her turn to be presented, she had to spend a full year being made beautiful with oils and perfumes and cosmetics, every girl's dream, right? And she only had one shot to stand before him and hopefully catch his eye. If not, that was it. But this guy Haggai liked her and helped her. So when her moment came, it said the king was attracted to Esther more than any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. I mean, come on, this story could be one of those rides at Disneyland, am I right? A true fairy tale. But we're not even done. We haven't gotten to the evil villain and Esther and her uncle saving the world. Soon after this, we learn Mordecai came to visit and he overheard a conspiracy to assassinate the king. He tells Esther, who reports to the king and saves his life. But we don't see anything coming from it just yet. The king kind of forgets. Rather, we meet the villain, an arrogant, evil man named Haman. He was the king's right-hand advisor, the second highest position in all the land next to the emperor. And because of his high station, it was customary for people to bow down to him and pay him honor, which he loved. However, Mordecai wasn't having it. He didn't respect him and he wouldn't bow or show honor. He probably saw what a pompous jerk he was like, no way I'm bowing down to that guy. But when Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay honor, he was enraged, having learned who Mordecai's people were. He scorned the idea of just killing only Mordecai. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. I mean, talk about full-on evil villain stuff here, right? This guy goes for revenge on a global scale. So he goes to the king and he falsely accuses the Jews of being rebellious and planning a revolt. He convinces Xerxes that they need to be suppressed, saying, if it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. And the king just agrees, not knowing he's being used by the guy he trusts. Pretty standard evil plotline, right? And for some reason, the king's never tipped off by the evil laughing. I never understood that part. But obviously, this raises a panic among the Jews. And Mordecai, in great distress, reaches out to Esther and pleads with her to go to the king and stop all this. Which you'd think, yeah, well, duh, of course, she's a queen, she's a wife, why not? Well, it wasn't that simple. Esther explains to him. All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends his gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed and I still haven't been called upon the king. So not even the queen herself could just go out there and talk to him. She would literally be risking her life by just walking into his presence, even being his wife. I mean, we did see how he treated the last one, right? Which doesn't seem quite as Disney-esque, but whatever. Like any good heroic princess, though, Esther faces her most difficult, darkest hour with bravery, declaring, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. The drama, I can't even, right? But of course, this is a fairy tale, and what happens next is just how any great movie script would write it. The king is pleased to see her and offers her anything she wants. So she sets her plan in motion and asks to host a banquet. And she invites Haman to come where she's going to confront him directly. And then that night, after speaking with Esther, the king can't sleep, and he finds himself remembering that time Mordecai, her uncle, saved his life. And he realizes, I never thanked him. So, and this is great, he calls for his advisor to help out. And when Haman entered, the king asked him, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? But Haman thinks the king is talking about him, and he just goes for it. He says, oh, here's my idea. Have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on his head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on a horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. I mean, talk about laying it on thick, right? But he thinks the king is going to do it for him, so why not? He's going for it. But then the tables turn. The king looks at him and says, oh yeah, okay, go at once. The king commanded, get the robe and the horse, do just as you suggested for Mordecai the Jew. Dang, you can't make this stuff up, people. Talk about the tables turning, so Haman has to obey. And then it gets even worse for him when at the banquet, in front of everyone, the queen begs the king to spare her and her people from the man trying to kill her. And he's, whoa, who is he? Where is he, the man who has dared to do such a thing? Esther said, an adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman. Dum, dum, dum. Gotcha. Suffice to say that was the end of the evil Haman. And in perfect poetic justice, the wise old Mordecai is given Hamas's position instead of the king's chief advisor, and all the Jewish people throughout the empire are saved, and they all lived happily ever after. And of course, our poor orphan girl Esther, who rose to be a princess in true Disney fashion, was allowed to return to her place in the king's harem, along with his other 350 concubine wives. Wait, that is that? Oh, yeah, that's kind of true, isn't it? Changes the story a little bit, doesn't it? You see, on the surface, Esther reads every bit the dream come true fairy tale, doesn't it? Where all the stars aligned for a lowly, poor orphan girl, just like Cinderella. Except, if we're being honest, how many of you would let your daughters watch Cinderella if right after the handsome prince slipped the glass slipper onto her foot, she was forced to go join his harem with hundreds of other women all being treated as his property, made to go under extensive physical treatments just to please his ever-wandering lustful eye? If she was destined to live alone and mostly unloved for the rest of her life, except when some king randomly decided to call on her for his own pleasure or to show her off to his friends like some trophy? The truth for Esther was that the title wife didn't really mean much. She had no freedom, she had no rights, no family, no hope for love or intimacy with anyone. She'd never be close to her husband. Even as queen, she was still basically cattle kept for the king's pleasure, to do with whatever he wanted. She was property. And when he didn't want or care about her, life was mostly probably meaningless and lonely. I mean, you think social distancing that we're going through right now is bad? As a member of his harem, she would have spent her entire life confined to the palace. She couldn't leave. And no one in there other than her handlers were allowed to even get close to her. It was breaking the law to even come in contact with her. As a concubine of the king, her only human interaction would actually be with men who were, this is tough, castrated as young boys to ensure that they were never inappropriate with her. They would have been completely emotionless with her. Or about 350 other wives who were all jealous and bitter towards one another, constantly competing for just a sliver of love and attention from this same cold, uncaring man who really saw them all as just possessions. The truth is, Esther likely faced a long, lonely existence, confined to the most beautifully adorned prison cell in the world. Fairy tale? Unicorns? Magic? Honestly, I don't think anyone was wishing upon a star for that kind of life. Do you? Okay, well, now that I've ruined the story for all of you, popped your fairy godmother bubble, let me just say this. Personally, I actually think removing the false veneer of everything is wonderful and Esther has the perfect fairy tale life, it actually makes this story way more powerful and impacting for us to hear and read. Because let's just be honest, while it's nice to dream about fairy tales, unicorns, and perfect happily ever afters, that isn't life. It isn't my life, and it probably isn't your life either. Am I right? In real life, things are rarely, if ever, perfect. Even if they may be shiny on the surface. And in some ways, I'd say that's the problem. We talk about this with social media, right? Everyone throws out their fairy tale-esque happy pictures and makes the rest of us think that their life is so perfect and everything's wonderful, when we all know it's not. There's always more to the surface for everyone, especially Esther. But what wasn't a false picture or a glossed over reality in her story is that while her life was far from perfect, she really did experience God do something amazing through her pain. She really did save the world. That part wasn't fake. You see, Esther was not an enchanted princess whose wish upon a star came true and she lived happily ever after. She was a person, just like you, just like me, who was honestly dealt a hand in life that oftentimes she probably wished she could reshuffle. And just like many of you, she had plenty of reasons and opportunities to just throw her hands up in the air and say, this isn't fair. Why me? This isn't the life that I wanted. Why am I going through this? And maybe just give up completely. To say, you know what, there's no way anything good can ever come out of this pain and difficulty, this loneliness, what must have been for her just suffering. And I think many of you watching today can probably relate to the real side of Esther. Work is a struggle. Maybe it's not going like you hoped. Maybe your marriage is on the edge. Just, how are we gonna get through this? Family, kids aren't what you dreamed they'd be. Finances are so tight you can barely breathe. Maybe your health is declining. Or like all of us, you just can't take another day of 2020. And it's madness. And you're saying, how could God do anything with this mess? How could he possibly use me given my circumstances and the pain I'm in or the things that I'm dealing with? And what's cool is while last week, if you're with us, the story of Gideon was about the problem of looking at yourself and what you don't have when it comes to being used by God. And I wonder if Esther isn't actually a great reminder for us to stop looking at our difficulties, our painful or trying circumstances, as keeping us from being used by him. When in fact, if Esther and the rest of the Bible is any indication, which it is, the opposite is true. Our difficulty and painful circumstances and experiences, they're not disqualifying factors in our lives. They're not keeping God from using us. Rather, they're often the gardens in which God grows his most beautiful miracles. They're often the path towards some of his greatest work. I think Esther is a reminder that there are no perfect fairy tales and that God never promises us our lives will be just easy and enchanted and everything will be perfect, but he does tell us that he will use our pain. He'll take our lowest moments, our trying and most difficult circumstances, and in the words of the Apostle Paul, he'll cause everything to work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose for them. And I just want to be clear, we throw this verse around a lot in church. This isn't a promise that God is going to fix all your problems and give you a storybook life with unicorns and princesses. Nor is it a promise that everything will turn out great regardless of how you handle it. Oh, God's in charge, everything will be fine in the end. That's nonsense. No, not at all. Rather, it's a promise that if you trust and follow him, love him, by holding on and remaining faithful to him, being willing to be used even in your lowest moments, then nothing will be wasted. Then he can bring something good out of the worst messes we find ourselves in if we keep our eyes on him and continue to trust him through it. And that's so huge to keep in mind. You know, Esther could have handled things very differently, right? I actually read one source that said in many palace harems, they had to keep the women under constant guard, not just so other people couldn't get in, but because oftentimes it was the only way to stop someone from them ending their own lives. They were so miserable. Esther could have looked at her situation and just given up, chosen to shut down and simply wallow in misery, but she didn't. We read that she worked to gain favor, sought the best in the situation she was in. She remained faithful, and when her moment came, she acted. And in the end, despite her suffering and pain, or even a little scarier, because of her suffering and pain, she was right where she needed to be for God to use her, for something so great it would be written down in the most widely read book in human history. Her painful journey was actually the path that was always leading to her greatest moment to shine to the world. And she discovered it because she stood strong and remained faithful and didn't give up. And in many ways, I think Esther's story it's less like a Disney fairy tale, and it's actually quite a bit more like the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. If you're familiar with that, he was a guy whose brothers sold him into slavery. And he spent most of his life being mistreated and abused in and out of prison before finally rising to a position of authority due to his faithfulness to God, where he too was able to save others. Or another, even more dramatic story of suffering, of someone who could have easily chosen a comfortable palace life where all his dreams came true, but was instead asked by his father to walk a path that would end in horrible anguish and pain, death on a cross. And it brought so much sorrow and torment that the night before it was going to go down and happen, he says he was literally sweating blood, and he cried out to God, "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Here we see Jesus able to express that he would have loved a different way. Any way, right? Please, Father, is there any other road that doesn't involve this pain? Is there any other way we can go about without suffering? But if not, if the only path to saving the world goes up that hill towards that cross, let your will be done. I love how Hebrews describes his perspective. He says, it was for the joy set before him that he endured the cross. Jesus knew that God was going to use his pain. In your trials, your difficulties, your pain does not disqualify you from being used by God any more than the searing pain of nails through Jesus' hands disqualified him. The opposite was true. It was the pain and the suffering that God used most. And so if our King was willing to faithfully endure and trust God to use his most painful and difficult moments to bring about hope and healing for the world, to believe that it would not be wasted, so should we. Just like Esther, you and I are called to stand strong and faithful through the worst and lowest and trust that God can and will bring something beautiful out of it. Not to keep searching for a perfect fairy tale life, but for our lives to have true meaning and impact through the highs and the lows, because we serve a God who promises to always be with us, to bring beauty from ashes. If we trust and keep following him, he will use our pain to bring hope and healing to the world. He is the God who takes graves and makes gardens, who makes beautiful things out of dust.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of the dust. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of the dust. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of us. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of the dust. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of us. Make me new, you are making me new. Yeah, you make me new, you are making me new. You make me new, you are making me new. You make me new, you are making me new. And you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of the dust. Yeah, you make beautiful things, you make beautiful things out of us.
I love the opening line of that song. All this pain, all around, could anything good come out of it? Yet life is springing up. He makes beautiful things. That's what he does. But the way that he does it is usually through our darkest, most difficult times and seasons. And that's who God is. God doesn't look at the gifts you don't have, the things you don't have, the experiences you don't have. He says, I'll be your strength when you're weak and I'll use you. And he doesn't look at our experiences, oh, that's too much bad stuff's happened there. I can't do, he looks and says, that's where I'm gonna shine. That's the ground that I'm gonna grow a garden. And so that's my challenge to us this morning, for myself, for you. There's no promises that life's gonna be perfect. There's no guarantee in Scripture of a fairy tale life. But there is a guarantee of a God who, if we are faithful, he is faithful, who takes our mess and makes something beautiful and will use us and never waste our pain if we'll let him. So may we be a people who live that out. May we wake up, rise, and shine. Wake up to the one who chose suffering in order to bring about our salvation, who didn't dodge it or run away from it, but walked straight towards it because he loved us. And may we rise to life in him, a life that sometimes will be difficult, that won't always go the way we want it, but we choose to be faithful and walk through the storms and the sunshine either way. And in doing so, we will shine to the world because God promises to use it for good. That's our prayer.